Howdy doodly gamerinos, welcome back to another episode of the Meta Update. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Ah, there we go. Found the button. Anyway, it was a rather large weekend overall. I had a total of 64 players playing singles events this weekend, but it was really polarizing. There were a lot of players who did not do very well. We had a couple of people do pretty decently in singles, but most of our good players were playing teams this weekend. So I have got a lot of teams list to show you guys, especially from the Eurotrash Cup, which was a pretty big event. A lot of national teams over in Europe were playing this last weekend. But overall, our singles win rate was bad. It was 42.4%, which, considering how large the sample size was, is very surprising. Our army is really, really good, and considering like a month or two ago, we were posting like 54% fairly consistently. The fact that we are down more than 10% is a lot. So, don't really know what's going on there. I mean, part of it is, like I said, we didn't have a lot of our better players on the army right now. A lot of people who can are probably switching over to Tau a little bit, but it's neither here nor there. Anyway, we had 59 of 64 players this weekend playing Grizzled, but we did have a fair amount of lists. I'm going to just say this right now. I only have like 3 archetypes to show you guys from this weekend, so let's go ahead and talk about them. First one, I made a video about this not that long ago, a couple days ago, talking about Doombolt Guard. If you want to have more information on how this archetype is played, go check out that video. It is the most recent video apart from this one that did just come out. But there was a lot of this. In particular, it was very popular over at the Eurotrash Cup. So let's go ahead and start talking about what people are playing. To start off with, at the Mance GT, the third Mance GT, we had Yuha Otlin, a name that I have seen pop up every now and then, but I don't know how often they actually get out to events, or maybe they're not always a guard player, but their name has popped up from time to time. They went 4-1 at the Mance GT, the third. They were playing a very classic one Dorn Doombolt. Kading Castling, Kading Command Squad, 3 Silent Command Squads, Nork Deadog, an Ogrim Bodyguard, 1 Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Krieg, 3 Chimeras, 3 units of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 2 units of 5 Scions, and 1 unit of 10 Scions. Once again, if you are trying to play this archetype and you take a look at this list, the thing that is probably weird to you is you're going to be starting, it's usually going to be Nork attached to a Scion Command Squad and the 10 Scions, and these 10 Scions are going to be starting on the board. If you start them off the board, it's too easy a lot of the time for your opponent to just run at you if they go first. You need that damage on the board immediately. And then Nork Deadog does help you avoid getting tagged from time to time, so that is a pretty good thing to have. Yuha ended up beating Death Guard, Admech, Chaos Knights, losing to Orcs in a fairly low-scoring game, so I'm wondering if that was like a hidden supplies or a supply drop kind of game where you only count the middle objectives, and then getting a win into World Leaders, going 4-1 overall. Moving over to the UK, we do have Ryan Cook playing almost the exact same list in a lot of ways. You can see as I move back and forth between these, there's only a couple of changes. Where Yuha was playing extra 10 Krieg and had a Chimera, Ryan ended up trading those 10 Krieg out, downgraded 1 Chimera to a Taurox, and put in 5 more Scions to have 2 units of 10 Scions instead of 2 units of 5 like Yuha did. Pretty similar result overall, beating Tyranids, Necrons, Thousand Suns, losing to Chaos Knights, which is a very surprising result to me. This type of list, this archetype, is very, very good into Knights, so I'm very curious what happened here. Like, maybe it was just a really bad board, maybe like his damage just totally collapsed, like none of the mines went off. Don't know exactly what happened there, but seeing such a large blow in favor of Chaos Knights, very surprising. But Ryan Cook, a name I haven't seen pop up all that much, getting 3rd overall at the Kelpie Crusade, going 4-1. So congrats to Ryan. Hope to see you again in the future. Moving on, we've got a player who has been making a lot of final tables this over the past year or so since I started doing these videos. But I don't believe he's actually been able to push over the edge and get that GT win just quite yet. But the 4th annual Blue Ridge, we had Duncan Blum going 4-1 and getting 3rd overall. He was playing a 2 Dorn, what do you call it? A 2 Dorn Doombolt, very similar to the list that I've been taking to things recently. Kading Castle and Kading Command Squad, 2 Scion Command Squads, an Ogrim Bodyguard, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, a unit of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 3 units of Kazarkim, 1 unit of 5 Krieg Engineers, 2 units of 5 Scions, and a Lehman Russ Vanquisher. So very similar to lists that I've been running quite a bit. Basic change here is Duncan dropped a unit of Battle Line and 2 units of Krieg Engineers and downgraded Norkton Ogre Bodyguard, and in exchange put in 5 Death Riders and the Luminar's Vanquisher. I'm not super sold on Vanquishers in this archetype in general. I think, obviously it's good enough to go 4-1 here, but the big thing about the Vanquisher is it doesn't really contribute to, like, the same game plan of, I have more things than you do, what are you going to do about it? Um, the Vanquisher ends up like being in the space of like 2 or 3 units sometimes. So I think it's okay. It just doesn't give you that same kind of board flood that a lot of other Doombolt lists kind of rely on. Duncan ended up beating Tyranids, Grey Knights, Sisters, World Leaders before losing in the finals to Dark Angel. Excuse me, before losing the finals to Dark Angels. I do know that it was a Purge the Foe game, which does make a little bit of sense. Like, on almost every other mission, the Dark Angels matchup is pretty good for the Doombolt Guard. However, on Purge the Foe specifically, because we have such a high unit count and Dark Angels tends to be much more elite, it can be a little bit more difficult because of that. So the game being a overall looks like an 8-12. Not super surprising that it ends up being a loss. It is probably our toughest mission into that archetype. Moving over to Europe, we do have the Euro Trash Cup, which was a big teams event featuring, I think it was like 10 national teams over this past weekend, including a lot of consistent WTC top finishers. The first thing we're going to be taking a look at is Arn Zernt, representing Team Germany, getting 2 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. We're going to go through this very quickly because a lot of these lists are nearly identical. It was a Kading Castle, Kading Command Squad, 3 Psalm Command Squads with Laud Hailer, Nork Deadog, Ogrim Bodyguard, Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Krieg, 2 Chimeras, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of Kazarkin, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 2 units of 5 Scions, and 1 unit of 10 Scions. Again, same thing, Nork Deadog, Psalm Command Squad, and 10 Scions starting on the board. Big thing about this one is the 2 units of 5 Rough Riders I'm not overly fond of, especially because that between that and the Laud Hailer, we're starting to get into spots where we could put in a couple of other things. In general, I think a unit of a Kazarkin, like a third unit Kazarkin, probably would have been a little bit stronger here. But overall, still, does everything else that the archetype really does. It is a pretty normal Rogaldorn Commander variant of the list. Arn ended up losing a close game to Custodes, big win against CSM, draws into Necrons and then Ultramarines, and then a 20-0 into Orcs. From the same event, we have Alex Fowler representing Team England, going 3 wins and 2 losses. Very similar stuff overall. Big changes here. So Arn had Laud Hailer, Alex did not. Alex had a third Chimera, and no Rough Riders and the Krieg Engineers coming out from this one as well. Overall, I like Alex's version of this list better. This is very, very close to, it might be exactly the version that Gustavo originally was trying. I know Alex Fowler a couple of weeks ago at the 6 event was playing a variant with no Krieg Engineers and 3 units of 10 Krieg. I think this version also makes a lot of sense. Especially because it is a 1 Dorn. When you have the 1 Dorn, you end up putting the Bodyguard in. You end up putting the 10-man Scions in as well. Overall, doing pretty well. I think it's a narrow loss into Orcs, a medium win into Necrons, a big loss into Votann, and then 2 medium wins into Ultras and Chaos Knights. Team England did end up winning this one overall, and I believe Germany got second, I think. But overall, pretty good stuff here from Alex, who I know is not normally a guard player, but has been playing guard recently in trials for Team England. Moving on, we have Eero Saukonen representing Finland from the same event, playing almost the exact same list. As you can see, the only changes between these two lists that Alex Fowler and Eero Saukonen were playing is Alex Fowler's version has a second unit of 10 Death Corps of Krieg, and Eero Saukonen's version has a third unit of Krieg Engineers. Otherwise, it is the same. So I think that means that Eero Saukonen is floating like 5 points in the list, which could have been 10 Krieg. It's about the same overall. Anyway, Eero ends up getting a big loss into Tau, a small to medium win into Custodes, a big win into Emperor's Children, small win into Death Guard, and a big loss into Tau. As we are going to kind of see throughout the rest of this, Doombolt does not do very well into Tau on Tau's board choice on WTC. Um, just kind of in general, it's not one of our better matchups. Moving over to Canada at Chimera Gaming. That is not accurate. Give me 1 second. I will update this one because we don't have too many lists to go over today. We have. Where are you, John? There you are. That, and then. Boom. Alright. John, you got 20-0 into Eldar, a 20-0 into Sisters, a 13-7 into Recon Guard, a 20-0 into Grey Knights, and then a 12-8 into Custodes. And let's fix that. There we go. Fixed. Alright, you guys get to see editing live. Anyway, John Winter Russell playing some pretty similar stuff, but he's going a little bit off the beaten path here. So John Winter Russell, Canadian Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghost, really uncommon in Doombolt variants. Yeah, I know John Winter Russell is a big fan of Gaunt's Ghost, but I feel like this is a surprising one for that to be in. 3 Silent Command Squads, Nork Deadog and Ogre Bodyguard, 1 Rogaldorn Commander, Ursula Creed. So those are 2 really big departures from like normal Doombolt lists. One of the major things about other Doombolt variants is the Cadian Castellan is really important to a lot of how this plays because access to that fallback and shoot. The sustained is nice, but the fallback and shoot means that you can play with the Cadian brick earlier on in the game, whereas Ursa Creed does make the CP economy really, really easy. So, but you can't use the unit nearly as aggressively. He was only running 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 1 Chimera, 2 Tauroxes, 3 units of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 10 Scions, and then 2 units of 5 Scions. So that's one of the other big things about this style is John is playing a much lower damage version overall than a lot of the other Doombolt variants because missing out on the Chimeras, like Tauroxes just don't do damage. They don't really they just go fast is basically the only thing that they do. And the other thing is not having this really big Cadian Castellan brick to be kind of your 3rd or 4th hammer in terms of damage that you can actually put out. So it's really just the Rogaldorn Commander and the 10 Scion brick that are going to be the major contributors to damage in this list. But John Winter Russell is oftentimes a player that generally plays like lower damage lists in general, so not super surprised to see that this does happen. John Winter Russell is a fantastic player, but I do, in general, I think Alex or Eros or Conan's versions of this list are generally just going to be stronger because you can play with that 20 brick faster and more aggressively than John Winter Russell's version. Okay, as I said, 20s into Eldar Sisters, a 13 into Recon Guard, a 20 into Grey Knights, and a 12 into Custodes. So very good stuff overall. I think his team got first at Chimera Gaming overall. I know they did very well. Anyway, moving on. None of those. We are going to be going over to Spain, where we have Roger Boira appearing once again. We're going to be doing the Dorns, Bulgrins, and Vanquishers. Oh my. This is once again very similar to the list that we saw Roger play. Was it last weekend, 2 weekends ago? It was very recent. It is very similar to the Spanish special, but it only has the 1 indirect piece in the 1 basilisk instead of including an artillery piece. Roger was playing a Cadian Command Squad, a Commissar with Add Human Detail, Gaunt's Ghost, Lord Solar, 1 unit of 10 Cadians to attach to Cadian Command Squad, and Lord Solar, presumably, because otherwise Lord Solar's orders are too short-ranged. And the Taurox, 10 Rough Riders, 5 Rough Riders, 6 Bulgrin. Only the 1 unit means that the Commissar is going to be attaching to it. 5 Death Riders, 1 unit of Kazarkin to go into the Taurox, 1 Basilisk, 2 Gleamers Vanquishers, and 2 Rogaldorn Battle Tanks. Now, one of the big things about this list is it is not quite as well-rounded as a lot of Doombolt lists. It's a lot more durable, but it doesn't have the same ability to board flood, so it does require a little bit better positioning in order to get your opponent to come out and play the game with you. The other big thing about this that always surprises me is when you have this many vehicles, in a guard list. Remember most of these teams events, and I know this team's event was played on WTC terrain. Um, you have to be very careful, and a lot of teams these days are choosing to go with Tau as your I'm going to give you the most open board I possibly can. And so this is competing for those kinds of boards, but it doesn't have like it is okay into Tau, but it doesn't really want to attack into Tau. This really wants to defend. I'm surprised that this is one of those builds that Roger's team ended up going for, knowing that you do have that pressure to try and give these open boards to Twin Lens Tau, which is one of the best armies in the game. Anyway, Roger ended up getting a 20 into CSM, 16 into Eldar, 13 into Tyranids, a 16 into AdMech, and a 13 into Deathwatch. Moving on, staying in the Mediterranean, we do have the Italian Royal Rumble being piloted by Edoardo Rinaldi, going 5 and 0 as well. Pretty similar overall to what we just saw from Roger. Two Kading Command Squads, one Commissar with Ad Puma Detail, Gaunt's Ghost, one Ogren Bodyguard to attach to a Kading Command Squad, one Rogaldorn Commander, 10 Cadence, which will attach to the Kading Command Squad and the Commissar, 2 and 5 Rough Riders, and then 6 units, or 3 units of 6 Bulgrin coming out. 2 Leman Russ Vanquishers, a Rogaldorn Battle Tank, and a Scout Sentinel. Um, so, I mean, there are a lot of similarities between these two, but the big difference here, of course, is the fact that Eduardo is playing 18 Bulgrin. That is a lot of Bulgrin. That gives you really, really powerful tools to play into basically any kind of Marine, any kind of melee that relies on damage 2. So your World Eaters, your Blood Angels, your Chaos Space Marines are all really going to struggle to play into this, and so you can generally post medium to big wins against a lot of those archetypes that just cannot deal with your Bulgrin, especially because they can hide pretty well, and the charge distances are not nearly as long on WTC boards. This one, well, you do have a similar number of vehicles as the one we just looked at. Roger does have a much heavier melee component, and so this is the kind of army that you can like defend open boards, but you can also defend relatively closed boards because the Bulgrin do give you that different axis of attack that you can generally go for. Eduardo ends up beating Drukari 18-2, 14 into CSM, 16 into Salamanders, a 20-0 into World Leaders, and a 15-5 into CSM. None of this, only one of these funny tank piles. We have Nick Gigello back to his hammer fun stuff. Nick Gigello, again, one of the most prolific Hammer the Emperor players so far this edition. Also at Chimera Gaming, the same event that we saw John Winter Russell playing at. He is playing 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, one of which has the Calm Under Fire or the Extra Order enhancement. 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 1 unit of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, 2 Hellhounds with Inferno Cannons and Heavy Flamers, a Leman Rush Exterminator, 3 Leman Rush Vanquishers, and 3 Scout Sentinels. This is very similar in a lot of ways to things that we have seen Nick play in the past. He just has to make a couple of small changes. I believe the main change here is he like shifted around some points in order to get like an extra unit of small things, maybe dropped a Hellhound or something like that, in order to just have a little bit more ability to play the rest of the board. But as always, when we look at these kinds of lists, it is all about playing your tanks aggressively. They need to be up on the board. And something I said in Discord earlier today, at least as of the time of recording, is your first and second Leman Russes aren't typically all that durable. Your opponent can deal with them, but your third, fourth, and fifth Russes are going to be nearly invulnerable because whenever your opponent brings out anti-tank in order to kill like one of these Leman Russ Vanquishers, we're going to kill it. And then they don't have that anti-tank to kill the next Leman Russ. And so really making sure they have enough tools to play turn after turn after turn of just making sure your opponent has to deal with a ton of heavy armor ends up being a really big deal. I forgot to update this one as well. Sorry, Nick. I'm just going to read it off to you because I don't want to edit again. Nick got a 15-5 into Votan, an 11 into CSM, an 11 into Tyranids, an 11 into CSM again, and an 11 into Chaos Knight. So small wins, which is a lot smaller than a lot of the things that we're used to seeing Nick do, but at least he's posting a win every time. You can't complain about that. Okay, moving on, we have a bunch of the same Recon list coming up. I've done several videos on Recon so far. I'm going to be playing a lot more Recon in the next month or so. while we wait for it to get nerfed, and also because there's a couple events that I'm really trying to win in a team's perspective, and so I believe Recon is going to give me and my team the best chance at doing that. But anyway, first one, we have Jawad Salah. I was watching the stream. Australis Tabletop Wargaming Network, I think it's called. But if you go like Australis Tabletop, it will pop up. He was on stream for the first round of the Sydney GT, where he was playing up against Orcs. So if you want to see some Recon being played live, you can go watch that. I also know that other people were calling him Jay. So Jawad, I'm pretty sure you watched this. If you would prefer that I call you Jay in the future, I can do that for you. But anyway, Jawad J Salah going 4-1 overall at this event, not 6-2. 2 Keating Castellans, 3 Keating Command Squads, 1 Commissar, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Ogren Bodyguards, Ursula Creed, 3 units of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Catachan, 5 units of 10 Krieg, 2 units of 10 Rough Riders, 2 units of 5 Death Riders, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, and 1 Scout Sentinel to deny to bring it down, and also give you the all-important reroll once to hit against targets that you need. So, good stuff overall. His only loss was to a member of Team Australia, Nathaniel Princey, but overall getting some fairly large wins for himself at this event. Going 4-1 overall here, just barely missing out on the podium. Still quite good. Going back over to the Euro Trash Cup, there are 2 very small changes in this one between Jay and Scott. Scott dropped 1 unit of 5 Death Riders to add a unit of 5 Ratlings. Whoa, they're the same. Scott was representing Team Scotland over at the Euro Trash Cup, where he went 3 wins and 2 losses. Man, I made a lot of mistakes on this PowerPoint. I'm sorry about that, you guys. But it is a 17 into GSC, a 0-20 into Huron's Marauders CSM, 13-7 into Packbound CSM, a 16-4 into Admech, and a 0-20 into Liam VSL's Eldar. I don't know how this happened. This is not a matchup where Eldar should be getting a 20, so I am very curious as to how that one happened, because even against Liam VSL, I feel like we're not supposed to get a 0 here, but that's okay. Anyway, so Jay's list and Scott's list, very, very similar overall, both doing rather well for themselves. Of course, Jay playing at a GT means that a couple of his early rounds are not necessarily going to be quite as difficult, whereas every single team they play up against at the Euro Trash Cup is going to be a ton of very strong players. So, good stuff to Scott overall. Moving on, we have... I swear there was one more. I guess not. Anyway, we have Scott and Simon, who is playing at the Danish Open, teams, exclamation mark, which I think is my favorite event name that I've seen in a while, because, you know, you have the Euro Trash Cup, which is like, you know, kind of self-deprecating. You have the Danish Open. Oh yeah, it's teams, teams, exclamation mark. We have Simon Dare, a player whose name I have not seen pop up before, but going 4 wins and 1 draw, playing the exact same list that we just saw from Scott McCutcheon. These are all very close approximations of what we saw Nemo the Fish playing at Pirate Cup, so not a whole lot of surprise there. 2 Keating Castellans, 3 Keating Command Squads, Commissar, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Ogren Bodyguards, Ursa Creed, 3 units of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Catachan, 5 units of 10 Death Corps of Krieg, 2 units of 10 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, and a Scout Sentinel. Simon ended up getting 4 wins and 1 draw, getting a 20-0 into Guard. Makes a lot of sense. It is a very tough matchup for Grizzled Guard or Combined Guard or any other kind of Guard. A draw into Custodes. 11-9 into Tau, which is very good. The entire world is looking for ways to play up against Tau. Recon can do it pretty effectively. And then a 16-4 into Emperor's Children and a 20-0 into Emperor's Children, both of which fairly impressive. Emperor's Children is generally going to be one of the most difficult matchups for Recon Element, but I do believe that the Krieg Engineers giving you those extra mortal wounds, the ability to take down the Winged Demon Princes relatively effectively, is a massive game changer into this kind of matchup. Overall, we only had a couple of archetypes. We had 3 nearly identical recon lists. We had Nick Giello's mini tanks. We had a couple, both Roger Boira and Eduardo Rinaldi, the Mediterranean players, doing something with the Bulgren Vanquishers and Rogaldorns. But of course, if you are interested in more of this, there was a lot of Doombolt this last weekend. A lot of it at the Euro Trash Cup. If you're interested in learning more about how to play that, again, I just put out a video about that. If you're interested in coaching, if you're interested in the Discord, hit me up on Discord, send me an email, hit me up on Reddit, wherever you can find me. Again, I do not respond to comments about it, but if you just need help finding my email, it is joshi40k@gmail.com. For now, though, thank you everyone so much for watching, and we'll see you guys all next time. Bye bye.